Partnership accounting. Okay, I know. It sounds like the perfect cure for insomnia, right? But what if I told you this supposedly boring topic is the single most important thing that will stop you and your best friend from absolutely hating each other after you start a business together? Yeah, I thought that might get your attention. Let's get into it.
So, you and your bestie have this genius idea. You're already picturing it. The Forbes cover, the matching Teslas, the whole 9 yards. It is the ultimate dream. But here's the thing about dreams. Sometimes they turn into those nightmares where you're screaming at each other over who paid for the office coffee while your entire empire just burns to the ground.
I mean, just look at our friends here, Bet and Ball. They went into business expecting celebratory high fives and just, making it rain with profits. But the reality? It was tense arguments over who used the company card to buy a fancy pen. That dream of building an empire? Yeah, that quickly turned into a cold war over who was actually doing all the work. And the reason for this whole mess? They forgot to write down the rules.
So how do you avoid let's call it the Bet and Ball breakdown? Well, you create what I like to call the ultimate friendship contract. It's basically a plan that forces you to have all those awkward money conversations before they have a chance to get, super weird.
Now, the official name for this magical document is a partnership deed. But seriously, just think of it as a prenup for your business. It's a legally binding agreement that spells out everything: who does what, who gets what, and who's on the hook for what. It is the ultimate shield for your company and, more importantly, your friendship.
See, the real power of a partnership deed is that it makes you hash out all the tough stuff right from day one. Like, how are we splitting profits? What if one person puts in way more cash? Does the partner who's basically living at the office get a salary? Getting this stuff in writing is like a vaccine against future blowups.
But what happens if you skip this? If you just decide to wing it like Bet and Ball? Well, then the government has a default rulebook just waiting for you. It's called the Indian Partnership Act of 1932, and you can think of it like a very strict, very old-school principal who does not care about your feelings. And its rules are, well, they're probably not what you'd expect.
So let's say you put in 90% of the money, and your partner, they work maybe half as much as you. Obviously, you get a bigger piece of the pie, right? I mean, that's just common sense. Well, let's see what the law's version of common sense looks like.
Boom, 50-50. The law says it's split right down the middle. It doesn't care if you invested your entire life savings and your partner chipped in $20 for pizza. Without a written agreement, you both get the exact same share. Is that fair? The law seems to think so.
Okay, fine. But what about a salary? Surely the partner who's fueled by caffeine, working 80-hour weeks, they get paid for that extra grind, right? I mean, come on.
Nope. A big fat zero, zilch, nada. The law just assumes you're both working for the fun of it. Unless your deed specifically says partner A gets a salary, you get nothing for all those sleepless nights.
And what about the capital you put in? Your actual hard-earned cash that's funding this whole operation. You've got to get some interest on that, right?
You guessed it, 0%. Your money is just expected to sit there, not earning a single rupee of interest. It's almost like the law is actively trying to start a fight between you and your partner. Are you seeing the pattern here?
All right, let's dive into the weird world of loans, because this is where it gets a little tricky. What happens when you basically become the bank for your own business, or when your business becomes your personal ATM? The rules are, well, they're different and kind of bizarre.
Okay, so there are two ways this can go down. First, you lend money to the business. Second, the business lends money to you. Sounds simple enough, but believe me, the law treats these two situations very, very differently when it comes to who pays interest.
All right, here it is. The one and only time the law decides to be your friend in this whole mess. If you give a loan to your company, and this is super important, it has to be a loan, not your initial investment. The law says the business must pay you back with interest.
And the magic number is 6%. Even if you have no deed, no agreement, nothing, the law guarantees you a 6% annual interest rate on any loan you give the business. This is a mandatory business expense. It's like paying rent. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
That's a great question, right? It only seems fair. If the rule works one way, it should work the other way too. So if the company gives you a loan, it should be able to charge you that same 6% interest. It's just logical.
And you would be wrong. So wrong. The law is completely silent on this. So if the business loans you money and there's no deed, guess what? You pay 0 interest back. It's a total one-way street.
This is a perfect example of why that deed doesn't just protect you, it protects the business itself.
Okay, let's put all of this together and see how these crazy rules actually play out in the real world. We're going to go back to our friends, Bet and Ball, and see what their final payday looks like now that they don't have a partnership deed. All right, it's payday for Bet and Ball. The business made a pretty decent profit of 1,03,000 rupees. But hang on, you can't just split that yet. First, the business has to pay its mandatory bills. That includes the rent it owes to Bet for using her space and that mandatory 6% interest it owes to Ball for his loan. After you pay those off, the actual profit that's available to share is a much smaller 41,500. And how do they split that 41,500? You already know the answer, 50-50, right down the middle. Because they didn't have a deed, the law steps in and says they each get an equal share. So they both walk away with 20,750 rupees. That's the final number after all the rules have been applied.
So, after seeing all of that, does that 5-page partnership deed still seem like a little too much work? Because it's not just a piece of paper. It's the difference between celebrating your success together and having a court decide who gets what. It is the best investment you can possibly make in your business, and honestly, more importantly, in your friendship. Thanks for tuning in.